And now, a passage from A Century of a Georgia Plantation by Merton Coulter. This is the story of the rise, progress, and decline of a plantation, a story that is not only typical of many other plantations in the South, but symbolic of various characteristics which set the South apart in romance and reality. It was located in Columbia County, Georgia, about a dozen miles up the Savannah River from Augusta. It had its beginning soon after the War of 1812. Black men were brought into wild lands to hew down green pine forests and thickets of sweet gums festooned with bramble briars and yellow jasmines to make way for fields of white cotton. The day of the planter had dawned. The people who came to this plantation, like many others who settled in Georgia and the Southeast, migrated from Virginia. Through marriage and inheritance, the lords of this plantation bore such names as Keith and Jones and Wilkinson. They built a comfortable home, though not with white columns and wide verandas, and they applied the secret of living well and genteelly with what time and money they could command. There was not a great deal of leisure on this plantation for anyone, not nearly as much as tradition would have it. The master, though subletting much work to the overseer, had the general cares and oversight, which could not be escaped. The mistress had much sewing to do for the slaves, the children must attend school, and of course the slaves must be more or less constantly at work, for they existed for no other purpose. So little leisure was left for anyone, yet the planter took rather regularly the Augusta Chronicle and Sentinel and the Constitutionalist, and the last decade before the Civil War found him a reader of the New York Ledger and the New York Herald. He read few books. The only deference to them in the written remains of this plantation is found in the will of one of its lords. Yet there was no lack of appreciation for educational polish. The children attended the County Line Academy at $5 a quarter for tuition and studied French and the classics. When they grew older, they attended the University of Georgia, Emory College, and Georgetown University in Washington. A daughter of the family, in order to be a true representative of antebellum society, went away to a boarding school, and what could be more proper than to go to one in Virginia? Here, this young girl by name Sarah Jane Jones went through all the romantic feelings, heart flutters, and developments of character and polish that attached themselves to the planter's daughter of history. It was soon evident from her letters back home that she was studying nothing very seriously except how to become a fine lady. "Our dancing school is over," she wrote, "and I hope I have improved in my dancing. I am still taking music lessons, and I have learned the Star-Spangled Banner, and I am now learning the Mermaid's Waltz." Her piano tuner was a piano maker and plays himself and speaks 9 different languages. She begged her family in one of her letters to send her brothers to a singing school in order that they might be able to sing with her when she should return. But mostly it was the eternal feminine in her that cropped out. She had scarcely arrived in Virginia before she was writing, "I expect that I am so much grown that you would not know me. I am wearing long dresses, and I look very tall but not very large, and you will soon have to dress me like a young lady, but I don't think of turning out, as I am not allowed to think of beaux. I wish when you come on you will bring all my mother's jewelry, as all the girls are wearing it, and I would like to have mine. I shall take good care of it, as it was my mother's." Jewelry was much on her mind. What she inherited from her mother did not seem to be enough. Wise though young, she wrote her father, "I write to tell you that I have gotten the earrings, and the price of them is $8, and I got a breast pin that cost $11, and I can nearly pay for it, and will you give me 4 more, which will pay for it, and I would like to get a bracelet to suit the earrings and breast pin if you will send me enough money to get them. Please write to me as soon as you get this so that I may pay for them." In all the gaiety of school life and visitings at White Sulphur Springs and other watering places, this Georgia schoolgirl remembered the slaves with affection, always calling them servants. "Give my love to all the servants, and tell them I want to see them," is a typical expression, yet she came near forgetting her native state, so much did she like the life of Virginia. Her uncle wrote, "She continues to protest vehemently against returning to Georgia, and I do not wonder at her dislike to leave Fauquier, for it is certainly the most fascinating country on the face of the globe." One day she wrote her father, "There is a great deal of courting and marrying going on now among my most intimate friends." She did not, however, succumb to a cavalier. She returned to Georgia, married, and spent the remainder of her life on a plantation. Another belle on this Columbia County plantation was Judith Keith, a ward of the lord of the plantation, who inherited great wealth from her father. She developed extravagant tastes there, unaided by the splendor of Virginia watering places and boarding schools. Though abundantly able, she never attended school outside of Columbia County. Among the articles of splendor which Miss Judith considered necessary to make her a fine lady in Georgia were neck ribbons, worked collars, silk shawls, fancy and plain, large and small, and of the blanket variety, kid gloves and long picnic gloves, silk mittens, hooks and eyes and pins, feather fans, blue and otherwise, muslin, side combs and shell-tuck combs, silk handkerchiefs, white silk hose, velvet ribbons, and bunches of artificial flowers, white satins and satin ribbons, linen tape, daisy buttons, cord, and tassels, Marseille skirts, cashmere gloves, French-marked collars, fancy handkerchiefs, Moselle fans, blue and pink muslins, fig lace, Moravian hose, chenille, English silk hose, parasol, and 13 pairs of kid slippers a year, as well as yards of calico, plain English, and German, brown Holland, and Irish linen. Miss Judith soon married, as might well be guessed, and moved on to the newer lands and greater fortunes to be found in Alabama, another recruit for the Great Migration to the Southwest, which had long been going on. What of the lord of the plantation and the larger family life? Equipped with a $125 gold watch, which he bought in Liverpool, and a spyglass, which was kept repaired for him in Augusta, he was enabled to wander over his plantation and keep time on his laborers and espy them from afar. A shower bath, which cost $50, awaited him after his day's activities, but he had leisure enough to make him a gentleman, and ability enough to act the part. He frequently made trips out of the state, principally northward, both for pleasure and profit. He spent a considerable part of the time on his trips at watering places, and when in these cities, stopped at the best hotels. He visited such resorts as Saratoga Springs, stopping always at Congress Hall and never spending less than a week, Montvale Springs, Rockbridge, Alum Springs, Warm Springs, and Sharon Springs. When in New York, he stopped at the Astor House, and when he visited Washington, he stayed at the National Hotel and Brown's Marble Hotel. He must not only act the part of a gentleman, he must dress the part. In 1857, he replenished his wardrobe in this wise: a black frock coat, cast pants, silk vest, raglan overcoat, fan cast frock coat, 3 pairs of pants, 3 cast vests, check, mixed, and black, 9 shirts, 3 merino, 6 pairs of half hose, 2 stocks, silk handkerchiefs, a hairbrush, a clothes brush, and a pair of cast gloves. At home there must be leisure and gentility. Picnics with boards of managers and printed formal invitations were frequently given. Evenings at parties and dances came now and then. A midsummer entertainment in 1855 called for these purchases: raisins, currants, citrons, cinnamon, cloves, nutmegs, brandy, wine, mackerel, pulverized sugar, pickles, cheese, a basket of champagne, assorted cordials, almonds, candy kisses, candles, yeast powders, pepper, vinegar, a large tub, tea, coffee, salt, ginger, gelatin, lemon, and vanilla extracts, and sugar ornaments. For the proper celebration of Christmas, 1840, by a Southern planter, the following was required: 6 1/2 gallons of whiskey, 29 gallons of wine, and half a gallon of brandy. Plantations could not have arisen without slavery, and without forced labor, they could not have continued long. Slaves not only meant labor, but they meant capital. The supply must always be kept up, and a few more than necessary could always be disposed of. Scarcely a year went by without new purchases. In 1836, $5,000 was invested in slaves. There were about 75 slaves on this plantation and 140 on an adjoining one, which in 1842 largely came to be combined with the first through inheritance and purchase. With such a large number, the degree of personal contact and affection between master and servant is surprising. As previously indicated, members of the family away on visits were almost as mindful in their letters of the servants as they were of brothers and sisters and parents. Marshall Keith, who died in 1841, and whose plantation came to be largely identified with the one under discussion, showed in his will remarkable consideration for his slaves. Some he willed to his various kinsfolk, others he left to be sold with the estate. Freedom in Liberia he willed to 3. I give to the Secretary of the Colonization Society the following Negroes, viz. Alfred, Daniel, and Thornton, for the purpose of being sent to Liberia, and also 5 shares of the Mechanics' Bank of Augusta for each, the proceeds to be paid to them or the survivor on their arrival in Liberia, and for no other use or purpose, and as I leave it optional with them to go or not, should they or either of them refuse, then they should be held by the executors of the estate for various uses.